Alright, so let's cut to the chase of this weird review discussion overview hybrid video monstrosity. I recommend Babylon's Fall, but I don't blame you at all if you want to wait for a huge sale. The live service aspect has single-handedly killed a large majority of potential players, with a lot of people having their other reasons, but at the same time, if the game can show that it can hold its own without them, take a chance with the players they have now, then I think you'd be missing out on not jumping in at some point down the line, especially if you're already a fan of looter games or even hack and slash games. Babylon's Fall was first revealed in 2019 and resulted in a lot of hype from the people I surround myself by. The 2019 E3 trailer showed what we know Platinum Games for, fast-paced hack and slash action. Then we got the rest of the trailers like in E3 2021, where they were met with disappointment. The seemingly initially single-player game was revealed to be an always online live service game, and many viewed the gameplay to be somehow downgraded. I magically only saw the initial 2019 trailer and then forgot about the game until a few days before its release. I was able to go in entirely blind, haven't even forgotten about the first trailer, and experience the game for myself. So far, I've encountered zero major bugs, and the only minor bug I've noticed is one time a boss just went sliding across the arena, which was kind of funny. First, let's start with the art style and graphics. All the footage was recorded on medium settings, and I was able to get a smooth, consistent 60 the entire time. Babylon's Fall has this oil painting art style that I honestly had gripes with initially, but once my eyes got adjusted and I played for a while, I found myself falling under its allure. Some areas don't display the magic of it all as well, but this area was the best I've seen thus far. Not every game needs to look like the latest and greatest or look no different than looking out your window. This is a unique and fresh look that I am all for. Clarity has its rough moments, but it's never gotten to a point where I go, I have zero idea what is currently happening visually. It'll get pretty blurry in some of the cutscenes though, like these weird after images when things are moving violently, but that's about it. All of the weapons and most of the armor fit in really well with the visual of the game, as well as feeling very grounded in the world that they are in. The reason I say most of the armor is because there actually are pieces of armor that were taken straight from Final Fantasy XIV, so when I finally noticed it, it was kind of crazy, but they still look good with the art style nonetheless.
What's happening?
Again, look, you can't swim, so you're only going to go about waist deep. But the seagulls are vicious.
The story is nothing to write home about, but I did enjoy the story, especially when we hit this weird midpoint twist. It was kind of jarring, but at the same time, it was jarring enough for me to just kind of go with it. You start off as a prisoner, given a very questionable thing on your back called the Gideon Coffin that can extend far and control spectral weapons, and you need to fight in order to obtain your freedom by climbing the Tower of Babylon. Your silent protagonist goes through the motions of climbing up the tower, facing some betrayals, revelations, and so on. The game kind of does this whole your protagonist is they just got it and so they can do it, you know, type of thing. So it ends up being nothing too amazing, but it's serviceable and can definitely be built off of in future updates. Once again, as with all my reviews, the real meat and potatoes that I focus on is the gameplay, and that's where I talk too much about. The gameplay of Babylon's Fall has been very entertaining, but it also shows one of the biggest faults. Platinum Games thrives off of this fast-paced dynamic action with death. That's what most of their games, if not all of their games, follow. But Babylon's Fall holds back on the death part and drip feeds it to you as you go through the story. As of now, you have your 5 weapon types: sword, hammer, bow, rod, and shield, all loaded with the simplest of combos. Rod and bows have different categories within themselves that change their behavior as well, and more weapon types are planned in future updates. You can equip up to 4 weapons. The first 2 go on your light and heavy slots, which determines that they are used by the matching light or heavy buttons. Then your other 2 weapons are your spectral weapons, which are controlled by the triggers by default. These attacks vary, but most attacks have a quick press and a charge attack. So you end up with light, or heavy, and then holding the buttons for charge attacks. That's it. And you also can't dodge out of most of these attack animations, so you are fully committed and risk being hit, so just mashing these buttons isn't the best plan. It isn't until the very end of the story, actually you beat the story, and then you unlock whole new fighting styles. These opened up new combos and general game plans, such as the power stance, which follows the simple combo philosophy that you started with, but then it's much slower, harder hitting, and your spectral attacks have enhanced charge attack capabilities while taking more SP. And this is something that can work extremely well for the likes of bow or hammer players, because those attacks thrive off of being charged. But at the same time, the swords don't have a charge attack when they are used in the spectral weapon slots, and instead it gives them a new combo, which they'll do when you hold down the spectral attack buttons. But if you really want combos, then you want to play with the technical stance, which is probably what you were expecting from the beginning. You get a much wider variety of combos for different situations that also rewards timing follow-up attacks with your spectral weapons. Just look at the difference between the standard starting playstyle and the technical style. It's baffling that they choose to lock this much behind getting through the entire story. By then you'd likely end up bored with pressing the same buttons over and over if you didn't already enjoy the presented feel of the combat. And all of that is just your weapons. There's also a few special abilities that are determined by the faction of your character which you select at character creation, such as a gap closing vault, a debuff, or healing that's all tied to your equipped Gideon Coffin, which has a tiny skill tree of its own that you will also unlock further in the story. The roadmap also includes another faction coming later on. They're likely adding more of these abilities if given a chance to. And then you also have your armor with slots for the helmet, chest piece, gloves, and leg armor. And then 3 slots for accessories when you hit the end of the story, but you'll start off with 1. Gear comes with enchantments or passives slapped onto them. The higher the rarity, the more and stronger enchantments. The rarity follows the same rules as most other games. There's common, uncommon, rare, legendary, and then divine. As a side note, you can only have 1 piece of divine gear equipped in each area, so you can only have 1 piece of divine armor equipped and 1 divine weapon. The enchantments take the form of buffs or debuffs with some sort of condition in order to trigger it. You can get a sword with a boost to your critical damage after getting a certain number of consecutive hits, or leg armor that reduces your SP regeneration after dodging an attack. Divine and legendary gear have unique enchantments that are always going to be on that 1 piece of gear in addition to the random enchantments. I think the system is cool. Having debuffs available for the most basic or important of actions, but having to take that sacrifice for a buff that caters to the build is fun. Yeah, I lose SP after I dodge an attack, but now my critical stats are going to be cranked and I can become a wrecking ball after I get that SP back. So now you know about the gameplay, but let's talk about the gameplay loop. If you're just finding my channel, hello. If you've been on my channel for a while, it's probably because of my Godfall video, so I need you to buckle up and prepare for a ton of deja vu. Babylon's Fall is a looter hack and slash. Your entire progression is based on the loot you get and equip. All of that gear has a score value and your ability to tackle content is based on that score. So you're not looking for an XP grind, although there are character levels, but that determines the Gideon Coffin stuff. Instead, you're on board for a gear grind so you can make different builds that revolve around your weapon choices. You start off in the hub area where you can upgrade your gear and work on your build, and then you can go to your quest screen and select a mission. You have story missions, skirmishes, and sieges. Story missions are self-explanatory, but the end game revolves around the remaining 2. Skirmishes are quicker, run in, kill everything, loot and get out missions, and sieges are weekly thematic quests revolving around different elemental weaknesses. While skirmishes all play the same, the sieges can have different objectives to keep things a little spicy. But at the same time, these missions aren't really randomly generated. Each siege and skirmish is a pre-made tile set, so it can get a bit monotonous, I'll admit that. But skirmishes also have the chance to spawn an infamous enemy, a special mini-boss like monster that you'll have 1 minute to kill for some really good loot. Your unwanted loot can be sold or recycled for materials for use in crafting specific pieces of gear or upgrading current gear. Keep in mind that being able to recycle unwanted gear is something that you will not unlock until later in the story. You notice a trend yet? The game also has something that I love in the form of melding, taking a piece of gear with a higher gear score and sacrificing said item to bring another item up to par. I've always advocated for making every piece of loot meaningful one way or another. Godfall did this by allowing you to upgrade lower rarities into the highest rarity, and Babylon's Fall does so by allowing you to keep a piece of gear that you've had for a while and keep it relevant as you progress. And then you can also do a regular upgrade on a piece of gear to increase its stats. The materials for all these different upgrading and crafting processes isn't hard to come by, you just need a large amount of them, so it's going to take a couple of runs and breaking down all those items before you can just go and upgrade stuff or craft whatever you want willy-nilly. I think you can get the materials at a decent pace and I don't have any complaints about it. And then we get to the part that everyone hates, the live service model. If you don't know what that is, think sort of like an MMO. The game gets content every once in a while, usually in larger expansion like updates, while also getting smaller content drops every so often. This opens the gates to expanding the game's depth and world, typically for the better, but at the cost of enabling ways to get more money from the consumer in order to fund said development and bring more money to the company in general. Square Enix tried this with Marvel's Avengers and it didn't perform up to their expectations, yet had to try again with Babylon's Fall. Having played both games, I can confidently say that the faults come from Square Enix more so than the developer. Marvel's Avengers definitely was a broken, burning mess at launch and still is kinda rough, but the developer was able to improve it, and then they went and added boosters and the like, even though they vowed not to prior to release. A developer wouldn't do that, but a greedy publisher would. Babylon's Fall currently has nothing in terms of purchasable advantages for obtaining or upgrading gear directly. It's all cosmetics right now. The game does have a battle pass system, but since this is the first battle pass, they decided to give the free and premium tracks to all players so that you can get all the rewards. The premium track does offer some in-game currency, which is already very bountiful and is small amounts, so it doesn't make a difference, as well as even smaller amounts of additional crafting materials, which is nothing that would single-handedly allow you to skip farming or even craft an item from that alone. They did already release a roadmap which highlights the content coming to the game sooner than you think. 2 new game modes, a new faction, weapon type, more story, and a collaboration event with Nier Automata. And most of that's coming out before the game would even be out for a full month. Now I will admit that it is pretty weird that all that content is coming out so quickly within a month of release, especially when they decided to drop the game now, considering how Elden Ring is still like, the savior of gaming in its entirety. With all this content that's coming out, they definitely could have just pushed back the release a month. Refine the stuff they have, maybe add the weapon type or one of the game modes, and then keep that content which already would have been out by then for later. However, the roadmap seems to be what will make or break this game, which is kind of what scares me. The release on PC has been very spooky, peaking around 1,000 players so far. I don't know the console numbers, but that seems to be what they're riding on. Which means we've entered a bit of a coin flip scenario where there might not be enough reason or enough players for them to follow through with the roadmap and continue supporting the game, or they choose to stick to the roadmap and show that they can improve the game in the future and add that content, which will bring in more players. They're going to be fighting against the stigma of a live service game the whole time, but it just needs to hit its stride and just keep going. And I will mention, it being an always online game does inhibit a lot of players from being able to enjoy the game whenever they want. The servers will go down for maintenance, people's internets can get rough, or maybe they just don't like the idea in general. It's hard for me to argue for this, besides it's a game with multiplayer always in mind and the characters are saved to your Square Enix account seemingly, but either way I think the always online part sucks and that should be reconsidered in the future. So it's kind of weird for me to try to explain the spot Babylon's Fall is in without mentioning other games, so I'm just gonna do it anyways. I already mentioned Godfall, but I also want to bring up Destiny. So Godfall is the first comparison I would make. Babylon's Fall and Godfall share similar gameplay loops, and if you liked one, I'd argue you'd like the other. Destiny is similar as well, but instead it's a shooter. However, Godfall was designed primarily as a one and done, and they'd add expansions whenever they get around to it, but is not a live service. Don't expect new or rotating content or reasons to play daily, weekly, or monthly. Destiny started off completely different to how it's played now. It took years for it to develop and grow into the systems it has now and went through dramatic transformations along the way. Based on how it is now, Babylon's Fall has no choice but to try to go down the path Destiny did, but the safest option would have been for the game to be more like a Godfall upon release anyways. To be frank, if the game was exactly how it is now but without a scent of live service stuff, then I'd go ahead and say that the game came out years too late, because this game would have been a golden candidate for the PS Vita. And I absolutely mean that as a compliment. I think everything about Babylon's Fall really complements the style of the PS Vita and the games it would have been surrounded by. But now the game at least has the chance to grow and change for the better because of the live service model, and I think the only thing that we can do is hope they take advantage of this and prosper for it. I found myself enjoying this game more than I enjoyed Godfall the first time I played it, because it just takes a better combat style, something that fits me better, and adds that same looter feeling that I love to get from so many other games. But to see the release and the reception to it has been pretty, not heartbreaking, but it's hurt. I just hope some miracle can happen and the game can recover. So yeah, Babylon's Fall, $60. I think that's too much. Wait for a sale. I recommend the game with caution. There is a demo on PS4, PS5, I believe, and I think they said there was going to be a PC demo up at some point, so you can also wait for that and let that be the final part of your decision making. But even then, definitely grab it when it's like a 20-30 buck sale. Let me know in the comments down below how you feel about the game. If you played it, how it made you feel, maybe the things that you will need to see from this game in order for you to be a buyer. Go ahead, leave a dislike if you like the video. Go ahead and dislike the video if you dislike the video. I can't even see dislikes anymore. It doesn't hurt me. And I'll see you guys in the next one.